You know, the goal for virtually everybody walking the face of the earth is to live not just a healthier life, but even a longer life. And that is why I am so excited to welcome today's guest to the exam room. He is the author of the new book, The Blue Zones Challenge, which offers a 4 week plan for indeed a longer and better life. With that, we welcome the man behind the Blue Zones, Mr. Dan Buettner. So good to see you again, my friend.
Good to be seen, my friend.
I mean, this book is fantastic. I can't wait to dive into this. I mean, you really have taken everything that the Blue Zones have to offer and condensed it down into 4 weeks, which I think is something that really anybody can commit to. But I think that this is even these 4 weeks. I mean, you've simplified it so much that people can even take it beyond that and really make this a lifelong approach. But before we get into the book, before we get into the book, it's been a long time since you've been on the show. So, can you give us just a quick refresher on what the Blue Zones are and where they are currently in the world?
Yeah, the idea was to, in a sense, reverse engineer longevity. So we know that only about 20% of how long you live is dictated by your genes. The other 80% is something else. So working with a grant from the National Institutes on Aging and under the aegis of National Geographic, an assignment, we set out to find the statistically longest lived areas. We worked with demographers, and that took 3 years. We found the longest lived men in Sardinia, Italy, the longest lived women in Okinawa, Japan, a population in Greece on the island of Ikaria that lives about 8 years longer than the rest of us, largely without dementia. In the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, we found a people who spend about 1/15 the amount we do on healthcare, and they have about a twofold better chance of reaching the age of 95 than Americans do. Go figure. And then in the United States, it's among the Seventh-day Adventists, where we found populations that were living as much as 10 years longer than their North American counterparts. And once we identify these places that have achieved the outcomes that we want, then the goal was to find the common denominators. And we used established methodologies, epidemiology, anthropology, medical research to find out what's correlating, what seems to be driving longevity in these places. And remarkably, no matter where you go, you see the same patterns over and over again. And we identified 9 of them. And that's the concept behind the Blue Zones.
This show, the exam room here, is so nutrition focused. With those traits that you were talking about, those 9 things, how big of a role is nutrition in that?
It's huge. The longest lived people in the world eat largely a whole food plant-based diet, somewhere between 90 and 100% whole food plant-based. And they have traditionally eaten some pork and some cheese, but not the industrially raised animals that we see in America. And we don't know if they've lived a long time because they ate a little meat and cheese or in spite of it. We just don't know. But we do know that when you take the example of, say, Okinawa, Japan, produced the longest lived humans in the history of the world, their diet was about 95% whole food plant-based. I'm sorry, 98% whole food plant-based until about 1990 when American influences came. So the approach we take at Blue Zones is we advocate only 100% whole food plant-based. We know that outside your Blue Zone life, you might do other things. But when it comes to living a long time, that's clearly a huge contributor to life expectancy. I'm guessing if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're middle age, you'll probably live 6 to 8 years longer than your counterpart who's eating a standard American diet.
That's a significant time. So we're talking about 6 to 8 years of life there. But what's the quality of life? You mentioned I think you said just a very little bit of dementia in one particular region. But what's the quality of life and disease rates in terms of Alzheimer's, in terms of cancer, and all of these other chronic diseases that so plague us here in the U.S.?
Yeah. The important thing to realize about people in Blue Zones is they don't have any genetic superiority. Their bodies have the same capacity that our bodies do. But what the reason they're living a long time is because they are avoiding the diseases that foreshorten our lives, like heart disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes mostly, several types of cancer, mostly of the GI tract, and dementia. And a big reason they're living so long is they're and avoiding these diseases because they are eating basically a whole food plant-based diet. You look at some places like Okinawa, women there suffer about 1/6 the rate of breast cancer that we do in the United States, about a fifth the rate of heart disease. In Ikaria, Greece, they have about 1/10 the rate of dementia we have here. So it's pretty clear that the path to this longer life is through less disease, which at the end of the day is what we all want, especially since in America right now, we're spending about 85% of our $3.7 trillion annual healthcare budget on avoidable diseases. So the biggest driver of these avoidable diseases is the crappy way we're eating.
Well, that sums it up nicely. The crappy way that we're eating. It's funny. I was going to ask you about the quality of life here. So fewer diseases. It's not exactly as though those extra 6 to 8 years are going to be spent in a hospital bed with around the clock care and questioning, is this really how I want to live my life? Do I even want to be here? That's a fair question that a lot of people ask when they're bedridden. But it sounds to me like until their last days, what you're describing, these are still very much healthy, active people for their age.
Yes. So in America, we suffer about 3 years of morbidity, which are the bad disabled years at the end of our lives. And in blue zones, that morbidity period is compressed to about a year. So they're not only living longer lives, they're leading better lives, and they're leaving a lot more money left over at the end. We spend about 90% of our lifelong healthcare dollars during the last few years of our lives. And the fact that for the most part, these last years are disease free and in blue zones, and could be in your life, by the way, not only has enormous quality of life ramifications, but economic ramifications. People say all the time, well, I don't want to live to 100. But if you look at the cohort of Americans who die at 60, you find that they're suffering about 8 years of this morbidity, largely because they probably led very unhealthy lives. And people who lead healthy lives, they not only have a better chance to make it to a healthy age 90 or 95, but the vast majority of those years should be good years, and they die very quickly then.
All right, let me push pause and come back to this. So I'm not sure that I want to live to 100, somebody says. And then you look at the people who died at 60, but you said that there were about 8 years of a significant decline in terms of their health. I mean, that to me is, I mean, that's mind-blowing. 8 years of decline and still only reaching 60 years old. You gotta kind of be scratching your head and be like, well, what is that person really doing to put themselves in that kind of situation?
Well, there are often people who get involved with drugs or alcoholic or who eat catastrophically bad diets. The reason they're dying at 60 is because they had the misfortune of either being born in very unhealthy environments, or they're to the extent that we think that we actually have conscious control over our food decisions. They've been eating a really bad diet, or smoking too much. But the point being is, the longer you live, the healthier you've been. So everybody listening right now, you want to live to 100.
There you go. There you go. You want to live to 100. I think that that's the goal. My father-in-law just moved in with my wife and I, and his wife, my mother-in-law, unfortunately is suffering from Alzheimer's. He's in a much healthier position. He has repeatedly stated that his goal is to make it to 100. Especially living in this house, I don't see any reason why he can't make it there. But you talk about catastrophically bad diets, right? I think that there are a lot of people eating that standard American diet who have no idea the type of damage it is that they may be doing to their body. If you were to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, just how different the standard American diet is versus the diets that you encountered when you were studying these various regions, how different do you think that they really are there?
I would say they are just 70% different, just pulling a number out of my head. So here's what people are eating in blue zones. I wrote another book called The Blue Zone Solution. And there was also I wrote an article for National Geographic magazine about the diets of longevity. So in addition to being whole food, plant-based, the pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains, rice, wheat, and corn, greens, 60 or 70 kinds of greens, tubers like sweet potatoes, purple sweet potatoes made up about 70% of the Okinawan diet, traditionally speaking, nuts are snacks, and then beans. And beans are the cornerstone of every longevity diet in the world. And if you're eating about a cup of beans a day, it's probably worth 4 years of extra life expectancy. Meanwhile, Americans down about 200 pounds of meat a year, a couple hundred pounds of dairy over time. On average, we're consuming about 27 teaspoons of sugar a day, much of it sort of hidden in our food. And there are so many artificial flavorings and artificial sweeteners and emulsifiers and these other inorganic compounds that mimic fat, that just keep our body in a constant state of uncertainty and craving. And our craving is never completely satiated because we just eat this fatty, rich, artificially enhanced food. And in blue zones, they're eating food that we've evolved with, the human species evolved with over the past 10, 12,000 years. And our bodies recognize it even before we chew it and swallow it. They know the sight, they know the smell, and our bodies react in a predictable way. So there's less craving and more satiation and the better taste too. I mean, I wrote another book called The Blue Zone Kitchen that captured 100 recipes from these blue zones. You know, they have the benefit of 200 years of observed cooking, of women in kitchens doing trial and error with very simple peasant food with herbs and spices and a little bit of oil. And the most important ingredient in any longevity diet is taste. So they know how to make these simple whole food, plant-based ingredients taste delicious. And that is the killer combination. Or I should say the opposite, the living combination.
One of the things that I really like, and it's actually close to the beginning of the book. You go around the various blue zone regions. There we go, and you have these beautiful pie charts that lay out what the diets in these regions look like for the centenarians. One thing that you really don't see a whole lot of room for on here are processed foods. How many how much of these diets were comprised of processed foods? I know that you said primarily whole food plant-based, but are there really any ultra processed foods that are being regularly consumed here?
See, the complexity of trying to sum this up. If you want to know what a centenarian ate to live to be 100, you have to know when they were, you know, a child and a teenager and a young adult, middle age, and newly retired, etc. And you know, for most of the last 200 years, there were no ultra processed foods, very low meat. But since about the year 2000, as globalization and American dietary influences creep in, you start to see the Doritos and the Coca-Colas, and you know, Spam arrived in Okinawa in a pretty catastrophic way. And so they watch the same advertisements we do online and on TV, and the distribution channels are reaching the blue zone, so they start eating the same horrible food that Americans are confronted with day in and day out, and their health spirals predictably down the toilet, and their life expectancies goes down as well. So if you talk about the traditional diets of these places, very low meat, very low cheese, and no ultra processed foods. But it's increasingly starting to look like the diet that people in Florida or Washington D.C. or California eat.
Did you said that spam had a big impact in Okinawa? Is did I hear that correctly?
Yes,
W-
yes. There,
Of all the foods that I would think would have an impact, that seems like a pretty obscure one. Why spam, Dan?
well, we have a huge U.S. military presence in Okinawa, one of the biggest bases, and they brought spam. It was in the K rations ever since World War II. And remember, during World War II, Okinawans were starving. I mean, we pummeled the heck out of them, and for 4 years, and then all of a sudden, this really rich, calorically dense food shows up, and introduced by the GIs, and they loved it. I mean, we are genetically hardwired to crave sugar and salt and fat, and you get this fat and salt bomb, and it tastes pretty good when you've been going hungry. And so they've incorporated it in their dishes in small amounts, but nevertheless, it continues to grow, and at the same time, so do the waistlines of Okinawans, and the diabetes rate, and it's kind of a catastrophe, because when we started doing this research in Okinawa in 1999, they were the longest lived people in the history of the human race, and now they are the most unhealthy people in all of Japan. So that's what progress is wrought.
I mean, so just to see that, what, 22 years, I mean, you who's devoted his life to researching this, that has to be almost heartbreaking to you to see such a transformation in such a short period of time.
It is sad. It is sad. I mean, it's no worse than looking at Detroit, or a big American food desert. But yeah, I mean, they were a living museum, a living example of demographically confirmed area where people were making it to 100, the highest known rates in the world, with the lowest rates of non-infectious disease, chronic disease, and they've lost it. They've
Hmm.
they've lost it, not consciously. It happens insidiously. It's like throwing a frog in lukewarm water and turning up the temperature 1 degree at a time. Frog eventually boils to death, and that's sort of what happened in Okinawa. It wasn't like overnight they started eating Doritos and Coke and Burger King. It just crept in over the last 25 years or so.
And prior to that influx of unhealthy food, what was the rate that people were living to be 100 there?
Among women ages 60 and above, about 20 times more female centenarians you would expect to see in that cohort than you would in America. Yeah. So they have the life expectancy was almost 10 years greater than the US.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
they were really all stars. I mean, 10 years is enormous.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole, you put it in context, the whole COVID pandemic, which our hair's on fire about that right now, has only lowered the life expectancy of Americans by 1 year. So now imagine a population that's living 10 years longer than us. It's just staggering.
Boy, yeah, you put it in those terms. I mean, that really does give you a lot to think about. I got to ask you though about these sweet potatoes, the purple sweet potatoes. Like, what is it about these sweet potatoes that makes them so doggone healthy?
Well, very high source of complex carbohydrates, some protein. The purple, their sweet potatoes, they're known as IMO, and that the purple in sweet potatoes is the same purple you see in blueberries. It's a powerful antioxidant. And sweet potatoes have 150% more than blueberries do, similar weight amounts. But mostly it's, they weren't shopping for longevity. They were just eating the foods that were available to them. And typhoons come through Okinawa 2-3 times a year, and they tend to wipe out terrestrial plants. But the sweet potatoes, which were it's a root vegetable, they could survive the typhoon. So as a result, they grew easily and abundantly, and they survived typhoons. And they Okinawans came up with lots of clever, delicious recipes for them, and so it becomes a really popular food. It's not because they were eating them because, oh, I'm going to eat these potatoes and live to 100. They had no idea.
Fair to say that they are, though, more nutrient dense than the orange sweet potatoes that we're accustomed to here?
I don't really know. If you can eat the sweet potatoes, I think are the closest thing to a superfood there is.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hey, man, I like them, and the good news is you don't have to live in Japan to get your
That's
hands on
right.
a good old super purple sweet potato.
Yeah, there
Uh,
may be some more antioxidants in the Japanese version, but don't knock yourself out looking for purple sweet potatoes when you can find the regular ones at your grocery store.
Let me ask you about nuts here, because there
I'm
is a
one.
good count me as one as well, my man. Um, there is a good segment of our audience here who very much prescribes themselves to a whole food, low fat plant based diet, and nuts obviously high in fat. But you advocate in this book for consuming nuts. So what is the balance there? Is it just have to do with a healthier source of fat than, say, your McDonald's hamburger?
Yeah, I did not find among the longest lived people, I did not find a low fat diet. Um, in fact, we did a follow up study in Ikaria, and uh, 5-year survival rate for a cohort of people over 65, and we found the lowest mortality rates among the people who were eating the most olive oil or consuming the most olive oil. So I imagine if you're overweight already, lowering your fat consumption is probably good. But I'm not well, I haven't observed low fat equating to higher life expectancy among populations who actually live longer. Um, Also, they don't eat a lot of nuts, so they're not going to tuck into a pound of nuts and eat them all. It's a handful a day. And epidemiology supports this, that people eating a handful of nuts are living about 2 years longer than who are not eating nuts at all. And it's a correlation. It's not a causal relationship. But I think for most people uh, out there who want to be uh, healthy and live long, and also want to be able to treat themselves right away once in a while with the snack. Of course, a piece of fruit might be better, but from my research, a handful of nuts is probably not a bad idea either.
Qualifier though, you're not talking about going out and grabbing a bag of honey roasted cashews, correct?
No, but I'm talking about salted nuts, salted
Yeah,
roasted nuts. So
yeah.
you see a lot of almonds, you'll see um, hazelnuts, you see soybeans, which I
Mhm.
guess is a legume, not technically a nut. So yeah, nuts. The Adventists eat all kinds of nuts, and Adventists are living 7 to 10 years longer than the rest of us. So, I
Let's
mean,
let's switch gears here and shift away from nutrition for a little bit. Another thing that you cover in the book is limiting screen time. I think that you say maybe an hour or less per day. As we live our lives currently, that just seems like an almost impossible feat. I mean, how how would you recommend going about doing that? And what is the importance of literally just unplugging yourself from the digital world?
well, there's a high correlation between how much TV you watch and what your BMI. So, and the amount of TV you watch is often a function of how many screens you have in your house. So, I have no problem with people watching TV as some mental repose or as a entertainment at the end of the day. But um, we know if you're sitting in front of a TV as you're eating, you're going to consume more mindless calories. Cornell University established that. I did a survey with National Geographic correlating TV time to screen time to happiness, and we found that people who spend between 45 minutes and an hour a day seem to be most likely to be among the happiest people. But after an hour a day, it drops. And the least happy people are watching TV about 8 hours a day. So the easiest way to limit TV time is to limit the number of screens in your house. So, ideally one screen, in a living room or something, ideally behind doors. So you have to, willfully open it up as opposed to having it on all the time. And
That
moreover,
makes
TVs often have commercials, and the commercials aren't for beans and broccoli. Commercials are for Doritos and Coke. So that influences us. The reason they run all the time is because they work.
Oh man, yeah, tell me about it. Advertising is the bane of our existence. I mean, you can't watch a game, you can't watch hardly anything without seeing, splashy ads for every fast food known to man. What's the latest and greatest high calorie meal at your local restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. It's just really a recipe for unhealthy disaster. Um, let's talk about the actual challenge part here. You've taken a lot of the components, as I understand it, of these centenarian diets, these blue zone diets, and you've kind of boiled them down, and you've almost made it into a game for people to see, how closely I can get to these diets myself. And you went so far as to assign points to them. I mean, how did you come up with this concept? I think it's really quite brilliant and something that everybody is able to grasp.
I'll take brilliant. So, my business for the last 10 years, we get hired by cities to lower the obesity rate and get them to go more plant-based, get them to move more. And we do this by not harassing people or not cajoling them and not incenting them and, not quote unquote educating them. We do it by shaping their environment so the healthy choice is the easy choice. And this is something we take directly from Blue Zones. In these 5 places in the world where people live a long time, it's not because they have better discipline or they're more enlightened or more self-control or a better sense of individual responsibility, as politicians like to wag their fingers at, or as Coca-Cola likes to say that drinking our product or not drinking our product is a matter of individual responsibility, not a matter of your health. So the whole Blue Zone Challenge takes what we've done in cities and distills it down for the individual. It is 30 or so evidence-based ways to set up your social life, your home life, your work life, and to a certain extent your inner life, so that the healthy choice is the easy choice. So I'm not trying to convince you to remember to do something every day or have heroic discipline. We do believe that a whole food plant-based diet offers immediate results. Within a day, you should feel more energy. Within 5 days, your digestive system should move along more smoothly. If you have skin issues, within about 2 weeks, your skin issues should start to clear up. Several types of skin issues. Your mortality rate drops by your chances of death drop by about 10% in 3 weeks. And by the end of the 4-week period, you should, if you have weight issues, you should lose between 5 and 8 pounds. But that's not achieved by asking you to remember to do something all the time. We do introduce the ecosystem of healthier living and ask you to set that up in your home and the rest of your life, and then you can forget about it. And that's what's worked very well in cities. In Fort Worth, Texas, we helped lower obesity rates by 6%. And certain parts of Los Angeles, we lowered obesity rates by 15%. And we're taking these same environmental insights and apply them to your life. And that's the idea behind the Blue Zones Challenge.
And I think sustainability in terms of making these changes is key. As you and I were talking before the interview began, New Year's is coming around, and I mean, if you make it to February and you're still sticking with your resolutions, you're doing better than most. But the changes that you're talking about making in this book during the 4-week plan, are these the kinds of changes that can carry with you well past just this 4-week window and into the future?
Absolutely. So these are things like if you have one person who keeps a toaster on their counter and another one who takes it off, within 2 years, the person without the toaster should weigh about 6 pounds less, because toasters remind us to put something in them. And what we put in toasters usually isn't all that healthy. It's often, somewhat processed and sweet. Having a junk food drawer. A lot of us are going to bring junk food into our houses. We don't mean to, but we do. Putting it out of the way, we consume it a lot less than if we put a clip on the bag of chips or whatever and leave it on the counter. Taking the TV screen out of the kitchen. Making sure you own comfortable walking shoes. If you own comfortable walking shoes, you're way more likely to walk. It's a sort of a 30 or 40 things that you can set up in your life, your home life, so that you don't have to think about it anymore. The healthy choice becomes the automatic choice. And when it comes to longevity, there's no short-term fix. There's no pill or supplement or superfood that's going to reverse, stop, or even slow aging. The things that work are the things we're going to do for years or decades, which is why we focus on reshaping your environment.
And my final question to you is this: since you've been studying these blue zones and really become an expert on longevity, how has your diet evolved over that time?
Well, I was a meat eater when I started. I don't eat meat anymore. Cut it out. I don't eat. I avoid processed foods. More and more, I'm finding processed foods is probably almost as big a culprit as meat in driving our health problems. My kids call me the king of beans because I eat beans all the time. I eat beans for breakfast. I have a minestrone recipe that I found in Sardinia that I make a huge pot of it every week, and I basically eat that start my day with it every day. So yes, and because I've been able to live in these blue zones, I've picked up a lot of recipes and I incorporated them in my life.
And yeah, I mean, Dan Buettner, you sir are doing a lot of good in the world. The new book is The Blue Zones Challenge, a 4-week plan for a longer, better life. Everybody pick it up. There's a link to do so right now in the show description or in the episode notes. My friend, congratulations on the release of the book. I think that it is absolutely fantastic, and I wish you nothing but the best. And please continue to do this research. It is absolutely amazing.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate the opportunity, Chuck. And if people have questions, if they direct message me at Dan Buettner, I'm very good about answering them. I love interacting with people, and I appreciate you taking the time. A huge fan and supporter of PCRM, and you guys are doing some of the best work out there, and I'm honored to be part of this, part of the conversation.
Oh, you are welcome back anytime. I'm sure people are wondering right now. So at Dan Buettner, is that good for Twitter and Instagram?
Yeah, just Instagram.
Instagram it is. All right. At Dan Buettner on Instagram. There's a link to that in the show description as well. Dan, you are the man. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck. Good seeing you again.
Pleasure's all mine. If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.